all the fractional stitches, half stitches are the easiest. It really is as simple as the name suggests. It's just a half of a cross stitch. It's a no-brainer, right? Well, yes, until you ask the question, does it matter which way it goes? Do you make it match the top or the bottom arm of your full crosses? Hi there, stitchy friends. I'm Kat from Catkin and Lillie, bringing you all the best tips, tricks and tutorials so you can learn more about all things stitchy, grow your stitching skills and get the most joy from your stitching. Today I'm going to answer the question of which way your half crosses should go. Although if you've seen any of my videos, you know I'm not going to tell you there's a right or wrong way to do it. But I will also take us back to basics and cover what these stitches look like on a chart and how they're stitched, to make this a fully comprehensive guide. So, let's start with what is a half stitch? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like, which is just one half of a full cross stitch worked diagonally across a square. These are often used in patterns to give an impression of an area that's paler or further away, or perhaps some shading, and this can add more depth to a design. They can be stitched using one or more strands of thread, so always check your pattern carefully to see how many to use. The only slightly complicated thing about this is how it's shown on a chart. So let's take a look at that. There are a few ways that half stitches can be represented on a chart. So I'll show the 3 different ways I've seen, but there may well be others I haven't come across. Method 1 is a single diagonal line. This style basically looks the same as a backstitch, because essentially they are actually the same if you think about it. The line can slant in either direction, and this may indicate the direction in which to stitch it, but not always, so we'll come back to that later. Method 2 is a full symbol that is then clearly listed in the key as a half stitch, often in a separate section. You can see how this would look on a chart with and without coloured blocks. And this style doesn't give any indication of which way the stitch should slant. Method 3 is 2 tiny symbols in opposite corners of the square. If the chart is a coloured blocks version, then there is often a coloured lozenge shape as well. This one does seem a little odd to me because having 2 symbols could indicate that there are actually 2 stitches to be made, but it is in fact a half stitch. It's the way my software shows half stitches, and I'm aware that other software does it this way as well. So, just take a good look at your pattern carefully so you know what it all means. I know I said it's super easy, but I'll show you how to make a half stitch and how I like to work rows of half stitches. And I'll show you how they're used in a design like this to add some background. Now, I'm going to be using 2 strands for my demo here just because I think it will be easier to see. So I've made some half stitches here already, and I'm going to add a few more stitches to this row. So to do this, I'll simply bring my needle up from the back of the fabric and down like this, like I'm stitching one arm of a full cross stitch. And as I said, that's it. I can continue the row in the same way, making those half stitches until I finish the row. So I said I'd show you what this looks like in a finished design, and I have this one here. It's a cute little pattern called Bird with Seedling Mini Polaroid, which is one of my own, so it is available to buy in my shop on Etsy, but also as a free pattern in my Patreon membership. And I've used half stitches to give a background effect for the sky and the clouds. I've used 1 strand for the sky and 2 strands for the clouds. And as you can see, you've got whole sections here, so you can work these by going back and forth along the rows. Let's take a look on that sample piece. So if I wanted to work a row underneath, finish that half stitch, come up below, and then I can simply work back in the opposite direction. So in that regard it is a little different to doing full cross stitches, where if you complete a row of the bottom arms and then go back across them, you're going to finish up in the same place that you started. Whereas with half stitches, you're going to be going back and forward and potentially end up in a different place. So if that was the end of the row here, and perhaps I need to then come back and work my row along here. And again, I can just work my way along like this. And you can see how I'm slowly building up the section here. Now I do want to show you the back of this, because when I stitch my full crosses I do them such that I have vertical lines on the back of my fabric. So if I turn this over, you'll see that I work my half crosses to give the same pattern of vertical lines. This will keep it looking neat on the back, but it also helps to make the stitches all look uniform on the front, so that will look neater too. Now, the way it looks on the back is actually also relevant to the naming, because you will sometimes hear half cross stitch referred to as tent stitch. This is true, to a point. There are actually multiple ways to work tent stitch. They all look exactly the same like this from the front, but they look different on the back depending on how you make your stitch. This is not the time to go off on a tent stitch tangent, but now you know that half stitch is just one way to make a tent stitch, but there are also others. Now, to the million-dollar question. Which way should your half stitch go? Should it be the same as the bottom or the top arm of your full cross stitches? I'm sure you can guess that I'm going to tell you there is no should about this decision, but there are a couple of things you can think about to help you decide which way you want it to go. Firstly, as we've already touched on, your pattern may indicate which way the stitch should go, either in notes included with the pattern or by how it's shown on the chart. The designer may want it to go a specific direction to enhance the design, or they may even include half stitches going in different directions to add even more depth or texture. For charts where the half stitch is shown as a diagonal line or as two tiny symbols with or without a lozenge, then it may be that the design is indicating that your half stitch should be made to replicate that direction. But that may also just be the way that the software they use shows half stitches, and there's no intent to show a direction to the half stitch. This is the case for my patterns, as the software I use creates half stitches with the two symbol / lozenge style, so I have to pick a direction to put it on the pattern, but I'm not saying that that's the way the stitch should face. If your pattern uses the full symbol style and or doesn't specifically tell you, then it's up to you. And don't forget that even if it does tell you, you're always free to adapt patterns. Now, I can tell you that your natural instinct is to make the half cross the same way that you do the bottom arm of your full cross stitch. But you may find that it looks neater and more consistent with the rest of the project if you make your half cross the same way as the top arm of a full cross. However, you may feel that the half stitches facing the same way as the bottom arm of your full crosses enhances the texture of the piece and prefer it that way. So pick whichever you prefer, but do stick with the same way for the whole pattern so it looks consistent. I have a preference for stitching my half stitches so they face the same way as the top arm of my cross stitches, simply because I like that consistent look with the full crosses. This does come with a slight risk that occasionally, if I'm not concentrating, I can revert to making them as per the bottom arm of my crosses, because that comes more naturally. But that's pretty rare. One final tip I have is to work your half stitches after the full cross stitches. I find that working full crosses next to or in between half crosses can much more easily distort the line of the half stitch and stop it lying so neatly. It's very marginal, but it can help your finished piece just be a little bit neater. I'm curious to know what your take on half stitches is and how you prefer to do them. So do drop me a comment to let me know. Or maybe you've never thought about it, but you probably will next time you come across them. And as with everything in cross stitch, it's not something to overthink. So remember to always stitch the way that's easiest for you and brings you the most joy. Talking of joy, don't forget to grab your cute bird with seedling pattern if you'd like to test out half stitches. You can find it in my shop on Etsy or for free in my Patreon membership. If you enjoyed the video, I would be delighted if you gave it a like, and do make sure to subscribe to my channel for more stitchy tips and tutorials, which will also ensure that they can reach and help more cross stitchers. Thank you so much for watching, and happy stitching!